the first thing I said to you was we have no system. Our organization was in our heads. So there's three of us, and all three of us are kind of doing things based on what's happened before. And we're sort of just solving problems. We weren't working in any kind of system.
Welcome to the Process to Profit podcast, where we find out about the key processes and productivity techniques that drive successful service-based businesses. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale, join us as we uncover practical strategies to streamline your operations and help you make more money by boosting your profitability. Let's get started. My guest today is my client, Evette Stobo. Evette has been working with me for about 6 months at this point, and I asked her here today to tell you a little bit about her experience working with me. And she is Canadian, so she'll be very polite about it, but hopefully we can get some honesty out of her as well. Evette, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't we start by you telling the audience a little bit about who you are, who you help, what you do. I've already revealed that you're Canadian, but some other interesting information about you.
Yeah, I don't know how interesting that is. Our company is the E-Suite. We are a people strategy HR company. So we deal with small to medium businesses, and we help them with all of their peopling. So everything from, sort of onboarding people to offboarding to dealing with difficult situations. Everything HR we do. We also do training and development work and a lot of EDIA work.
Can you tell us what EDIA is? Because not everybody knows what EDIA
Equity,
is.
diversity, inclusion, and accessibility.
Okay. And you said you're in Ontario, but you're in a very small town, I hear.
I do live in Port Dover, Ontario, which is on Lake Erie, but we do most of our work in Toronto, and we do a lot of work in Alberta.
Okay. So you're kind of, all over the place, or as much as I know about Canadian geography, you're all over the place. I should really be better at that. Us as Americans in general should be better at knowing Canadian geography. So we've been working together for about 6 months now. So I'm just going to kind of ask you a little bit about your experience and what it was like before and sort of what it's like now after, we're almost complete our time together. So can you describe what your typical workday looked like before we started working together? How would you start out? How did it feel? What did it look like?
Yeah, the word that came to mind immediately was chaos. So I think that when we started chatting, the first thing I said to you was we have no system. We have no, our organization was in our heads. So there's three of us, and all three of us are kind of going, we're doing things based on our previous, what's happened before. And we're sort of just solving problems. We weren't working in any kind of system. So that was our situation before. And I think now we're still working on implementing some of the systems, but for the most part, we have this system that you introduced me to that we sort of log into every morning, and it leads us through what we need to do for our client. It took us away from using only email to communicate to communicating like a bigger company, not just a company of 3 people.
So talking a little bit more about the before, kind of what it was like, what was the biggest challenge you faced in your business before we started working together that sort of led you to kind of reach out to find help with this?
Communication. So we have someone who does our payroll and benefit, and she's amazing. And we don't really have to reach out to her too often. But for the two of us that do the day-to-day, that are working with different companies and working on different projects and working on all of these different things, we were struggling with communication. We were getting, I think, annoyed with each other based on, is it a text? Is it a phone call? Is it written by is it sent by carrier pigeon?
Smoke signals.
It was always, and it was me, sort of writing things down and taking pictures of them and sending them. Me not telling people who our clients were, getting a new client and not saying anything about it to anybody. So we've been able to pull that all in and set up not just the system that I spoke about, but set up real meeting time and treat ourselves like a real company. I think that's it. Treating ourselves like a real company. So yes, you've introduced us to a bunch of systems and process work, but also through the coaching work we've done, you've made me realize that I needed to stand up and act as CEO, not as buddy or peer or coworker, but be there for my people. Um,
Yeah. How have you kind of changed from where you were acting like before, where you were their buddy, to now being more of a CEO? What's different for you in sort of your day to day and in your mindset for that?
Yeah. It's interesting because I do the work with people telling them what to do. Um, so I'm telling them, not telling them, but working, co-creating just these really great relationships and communication strategies within companies. And then I'm not doing it within my own, right? So I was often getting upset because I was misunderstood. Things were falling through the cracks. We were making mistakes and we weren't addressing them because we were too busy. We were always sort of we were always on the run. That it was always on the run because people were part-time, or they have other things to do, and we all work remotely. So we weren't able to get I think we were able to sync with each other. And I think now
Mm.
we're really synced up. We have daily meetings and then we have weekly meetings and we have biweekly meetings, but they're not for an hour. They're 5-minute bite here and there to just sort of touch base. And everybody's voice is a little bit clearer now.
Yeah. And I've definitely seen that through our sessions of the way that you're describing your work together and how much easier it feels for you to be running a business like this as opposed to what you were doing or not doing before.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked a little bit about sort of your relationship with technology and systems. Can you tell me about, or tell our listeners, because I already know, but tell our listeners about your relationship with technology before we started working together?
Well, technology is not my friend, never has been. I think that, you know, most folks who work in really, I'm a coach and I'm an HR person. So I work in the peopling. And I've always sort of had people around me in bigger corporations when I worked there to manage that systems, tell me there's a system and give me a guidebook, that sort of thing. So when I had to start implementing my own systems and working with technology, I was spending a lot of money on IT, but also for no reason, like just because I didn't understand what I was doing. So now I have this ability to look at the system because we've worked through it and you've explained. I think what you've done is you've explained to me how it works rather than explaining to me how to work it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Like, this is the system, this is how it works. When you're putting this in, this is where it goes. That sort of thing makes a lot of sense to me. But systems in general and technology and me are not friends. I feel very confident working in this system and in the systems we've created.
Yeah. And I remember you just saying, like, I hate technology. I hate it.
Hate
I
it.
don't want anything to do with it. I want nothing. I just want it to work and I don't want to think about it anymore. What's your feeling towards it a little bit, hopefully a little bit more friendly now?
Yeah. I dislike it. I don't hate it anymore.
Okay.
What I've been able to,
Progress.
yeah. So what I've been able to realize over the last 6 months is that, um, the speed which we can at which we can go when using technology allows us to touch so many more clients. So I am embracing it. I do not love it, but I understand how much better it makes us operate. I met with a client this morning and I said this words from you, and we can set up a system for that. We can literally we'll go through, we'll find a system that works for you and we'll have shared files. I've never said that before. We're going to share files. Um, so it feels like uh I feel like over the last 6 months, I've learned to trust myself. Um, much as you would, I think, we got iPhones, right? So we trust our iPhone or our whatever phone. I feel like that about the systems now that I can trust that the data is there and that we can go in there and get everything. I'm not scared of it anymore.
Great. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's that's one of the things that I really try to help people understand is that technology does not have to be scary. It doesn't have to be intimidating. Like you
Yeah.
can understand the basics of how it works so that you feel more comfortable with it and it doesn't have to be terrifying. People a lot of the times are afraid of it and it's funny, I always use the analogy it's not brain surgery because I've had brain surgery and I'm very open about that on this podcast.
Yeah.
So I could say that. It's not brain surgery. Like if we screw something up, we will fix it. We'll figure it out. It's not going to kill your business. We will, we will pivot. We will do whatever we have to do to figure that out. So I'm glad that you are finally, feeling like that and feeling comfortable and not, even if you don't love technology and that's okay, you at least appreciate it and understand a little bit better. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that we've gotten to that point at least.
Yeah.
So can you share, still kind of going back to the before, can you
Okay.
share any sort of specific moment or issue in your business where you realized, okay, I really need to fix this. I really need more processes. I need a system. I need help. Like, what was that sort of defining moment for you?
Yeah, I think what it was we're using Dropbox, we were using SharePoint, we were using random old emails. We are going through so for instance, we had a client that we hadn't dealt with in 6 months, and they called us and they started asking us questions. And we had to literally go back through email and then go into deleted items and bring back the deleted items, which cost money, and look at those and hope that that email was in there, right? Like, hope that that information was in there. Or we were filing things for people, um, but where were they, right? Like, I couldn't find them. So when a client called and said, "Oh, yeah, we wanna do this with you. Remember that project we worked on?" We did that, we went back, and it wasn't there. So we had to tell the truth, obviously. "Hey, listen, we lost all the information." Kind client didn't mind, but what if they weren't? What if
Right.
they weren't? So now all of the client information is in the same spot. Right? It's in the same spot. We still have emails, of course, but we can go in and say, "Oh, this is ABC company. Here's when we started working with them. Here's the rates. Here's what we did for them. Here's the projects we worked on." Done.
Yeah. Yeah. And it took us a while to get there, but we got there. So,
Yeah, and
so
I think there's an interesting thing for me to say about what you did with me there that I want to share is, and I think a lot of people feel the way I did. I pushed back. When you said to me, "We're going to do this," I was angry and I got wound up and I got upset. And you held the space for that to happen. And I think that's the important part of the difference between working with you and working with some, and not to diss IT folk, but you're working with some IT person who doesn't understand what I'm going through. Um, you held the space for me to get angry and then said, "Okay, can we move on? Like, are you good with that? What else do you need? Let's move on." Right. And I don't know. That was really important to me. That was important to me.
yeah. And thank you so much for bringing that up because a lot of the work that we do together and that you and I have done together is changing your habits and changing your way of thinking, and that can be really hard for people. And that
Mhm.
can be really and as a coach how hard it is to change your mindset on certain things, and you have to be given that space to kind of work through your feelings on it, work through your reaction to it. And so I'm so glad that you said that because that's a big part of what I try to help people
Mhm.
with is, okay, I know you don't want this the way that we have it right now, but is the way that you're doing it already worse? And how can we make it better, but still make you feel comfortable with it? And one of the things I did want to talk about is, tell me about the process that we went through, because I know we went through several different systems. So, what was that
Mhm.
like for you on your end for us to be trying new systems and testing them and seeing how they worked with the way that you thought? Tell me about that process.
Yeah. So that was interesting because I think we looked at I think there was like 4 or 5 when we started out that we were looking at. And I think in the beginning I had this vision of how this was going to be, right? And there was going to be like 3 different systems that all tied in and I was going to have to do all this stuff and I was nervous. And we tested out each system with the ideas I had, and you were able to say to me that won't work. Here's why. Right? That one won't work. Here's why. Let's move on to the next one. And then I got stuck on one, thought it was the one, and you let me sit in that for a little while. And I tried it out and we came back and by the I think you had gone away for a week and I was playing around with it. And then by the time you came back, I was like, "Yeah, so the one that I thought I liked, I don't." And then we pivoted. Um, but it was good to try them all out. I wouldn't have done that. I would have just gone with probably the cheapest one or the one that someone told me was good. And instead, I ended up one that supports most of what we needed and also recognized that the thing I thought we needed, we don't need.
Mhm.
So that was really interesting to go through the process and be able to eliminate these little pieces that I thought were really important because they weren't.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so different when you get in and start using the system and you start like feeling around, that sounds dirty, but like feeling around how it actually works and understanding how the data is handled, I think is a lot different than just hearing from someone like you said because you have, relatives in business and you have other
Mhm.
friends in business who probably gave you their opinions and
Yep.
that their needs are probably not the same as your needs. So it was important for us to get in, play with the system,
Yeah.
not make it super high risk.
Mhm.
And not only that, but I actually guided you through setting up the systems. It wasn't just me
Oh,
saying, "Oh, go try this system." Like we actually sat together on our calls and we set them up and we walked through them to make sure that you really understood how the system worked and were feeling comfortable with it so that you could then continue on sort of playing with it by yourself.
well, and that's one of the most important things that you did because I would have said, like, literally done it 100 times. Yeah, okay, I'm going to use this system. And then I would have bought it, paid my whatever money for the year, and I would have let it sit there. And I wouldn't have done anything because I wouldn't have known what to do past the time we got off the call. So you walking me through took away one, the fear, right? The fear of getting into a system. Um, you also showed me that I can make mistakes in the system and it's not going to bite me. Um, so that was a big deal for me. And then, to share it with my team and have them give me feedback and then come back to you and be like, well, what about this? And we were able to work through it together. We did some workarounds, right? Like you were actually able to go into the system and play with it and then tell me, okay, we looked at this. This is what we can do. So that was so helpful for me to have
Yeah.
because if you're a person who didn't grow up, right, didn't grow up with computers, like systems, all of that stuff, I did not have that. Even in my first 10 years of working, that wasn't a thing. And then spent most of my time working with people, not with, computers. There's a fear that you're going to ruin everything. Um, you need hand holding. You can't do that on your own. You can't. So I felt very supported through it.
Great. I'm so glad. And I loved helping you realize that it wasn't going to bite you and that
Yeah.
it didn't have to be scary. And now you're in there like zipping around like you were doing it all your life. So
Yeah.
can you tell us one specific process that I mean I know, but one specific process that you now have in your business through our work together? We don't have to beat around the bush. We can talk about it. I mean, you ended up with Asana after we
Uh-huh.
tried several
Yep.
other options. Um, so tell us one specific process that you now use in your business that you didn't have before we started working together.
I can think of a few. Um, but I think the one that is the best for me is that we can go in there and make our note. I know it's a small business and it's a very personal business. So we're dealing with people a lot. We're not dealing with files a lot, that sort of thing. But I can go into my client, you know, Lauren, and put in, spoke to Lauren today. This is what's happening. We need to send her a contract. Name Crystal, and then Crystal's going to take care of it. I don't even have to
Mhm.
follow up because she knows that that's on her now. And then the next day, if I'm traveling, I can look in and say, "Oh, she did do it. Okay," and she sent it to Lauren. Um, so it's taking out the guesswork for us, and it's taking out some of the extra communication that we had
Or
to have.
lack of communication
Both.
sometimes too.
Sometimes communicating about the wrong thing, right?
Yeah. And I remember you telling me when we first started working together that it was all in your head and you wanted to get it out of your head and, with your team members
Mhm.
and that, you felt like you were holding them and you can correct any of this or,
Yeah.
or clarify, but you felt like you were holding them to a standard that wasn't fair because they didn't have the same information that you were already holding in your head. Can
Yeah.
you tell viewers a little bit more about that scenario?
Yeah, so if I am the person who goes out and gets the business, and I'm generally the person who starts off the business, but they do the work, right? So I'm talking to the client who's saying, I need to onboard 16 people, and I want to do it appropriately, and I want to make sure that this works out. So I'm the person who comes up with the idea. I've signed a contract with the client, and then I bring it back to them, and they do most of the work. But I had all these ideas of how it was supposed to be done. Oh, we need to do this. We need to do that. We need to do this. So I wasn't I wasn't explaining myself clearly because I was on fire all the time. So by the time it got to them, it was so complicated. Um, and we were snipping at each other, because we were confused because the information was nowhere but here. Or I had written a note and didn't know where it went, that kind of thing.
Yes, you
So
love your hand notes.
I love them. But
And how Oh, go ahead.
no, I just think it cleared. Well, I could dump it out of my head. I don't need to know what each client is and who each client is, how much we bill them, how we work with them because we work with each client differently. That's all in there.
So, you were someone when I first started talking to you who kept everything on physical notes. Are you still kind of doing that as part of your process? What does your process look like now when you're trying to organize information? Because a lot of people that I talk to are like, I can't get rid of my handwritten list. I can't get rid of my notes.
Mhm.
It's just how my brain works. And I know that's kind of how your brain works too. So can you tell us kind of how that now fits into your larger process with your team members?
Yeah. So I still do take notes. I take notes. I even in I mean even in university, I wrote the things down to remember them. Right. That's how I learn. But I write I write about the conversation, but everything else goes into the system. So I can be talking to the client and go in Asana and say bill of plumbing, um, the date, the conversation. This is sort of like the sales call, right? So I'm going in
Hmm.
there and I'm putting it in and I'm hitting it and it's green, right? And that means we're ready to go, but we're not quite there yet, right? So that's kind of that. It cleared up having to pull the contract out and all of that kind of stuff. But my notes are still there. I can also scan my notes back in. I can
Hmm.
take a picture of my notes and scan them in. I can do all of those things. Um, but the notes are for me. The notes don't need to go out to them. I have not sent Crystal one single text message of a note that I've written in the last 3 months.
I'm so proud. She must be so happy.
She's very happy. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to do with this? Now I gotta type
No.
it in. Yeah. And she's been a trooper. Like, she's been very, very willing to kind of help us figure this out. She's been very on board with all these process changes.
Mhm.
How has your relationship with her and your other assistant evolved through
Mhm.
our work together?
Yeah. It's they're excited that I it's kinda like this. You start a new job, right? You're starting to work somewhere and you sit down at your desk and there's nothing there. That was how we were before, right? You sat down at your desk and there was nothing there. But when our other person who deals with mostly payroll and um benefits, when she started, she could just go right into the system. So there was a real business there. Because when you're working from home, you're working remotely, you're working in your closet, spare room, couch. It's nice to have a dashboard. It's nice to have something that looks like this is me checking into work. So that's one thing. With Crystal and I, we're both very type A. We're going at it. We're not mincing words. What it's allowed us to do is focus on something else. So it's not that I don't have the information. It's not that Crystal doesn't have the information. It's that it's not in the system. So we can work together to put it in the system,
Yeah.
right? That really helps
Yeah.
us a lot.
And a lot of what we've talked about in especially in the last, month or so has been around your mindset specifically, how you now need to see yourself and do see yourself as more of a business owner, as more of the CEO and less of a somebody's hiring me to do a job. How has that how did that mindset shift come about,
Uh-huh.
and how has that changed how you now approach your business?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and we've talked a lot about the physical system of sauna, but I think through our coaching and through the work we've done together about Asana and other things, and systems don't necessarily have to be something technical. Um, the system of communication that you and I have talked about a lot made me stop saying I was almost taking things on like it was a job, right? I'm used to reporting to someone. So yeah, until 5 years ago, I always reported into a president or a CEO or whatever. So now I have this. I'm like, okay, there's no one to report to, but I don't have to report to anybody because it's me. I'm
Mhm.
not. So before I was going to the client as they were my boss instead of being their solution, right? Like I want to be a problem solver for them. I want to show up to fix what's broken for them with them. Um, and when you're operating as their subordinate, that won't happen. So I'm not doing that anymore. And then I'm able to support my people. I did the support thing. I'm able to support my people instead of talking to them like they're my peers. Like I'm not, oh my God, we have to get this done for the client because they're going to be really mad if we don't. It's like, okay, well, let's look at this. How do you think we should do it? Because there's more time and we're communicating clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of what we talked about too is now you have the mental capacity especially
Yeah.
to take that step back and think through, what do I want my business to look like? What do I want to get out of my business? How do I want it to run? How involved do I want to be in it? How has
Mhm.
that shift come about, and what does it look like for you now that you're kind of taking that stance?
Well, let's call those boundaries. So I think that I'm by nature a people pleaser. And I'm very, very flexible. So that's difficult. Because if you're a people pleaser, and if we go into emotional intelligence, you know, I am spinning in circles trying to get things done perfectly for everyone at all times without thinking about what I have to do for me. So you talk to me a lot about boundaries and when do you want to work and what are you doing? And, so some of the conversations we had around like, so why are you working for yourself if you're going to do that? Right. Like, I now have a very strict schedule. I built a schedule for myself. And that schedule includes trying to be done work at 5. Right. So I start early in the morning. And I have my time to, work out and do the things that I do, read, write, do all that before I start work. And then everything's organized because I can look in the system, see what we've got to do today, check my agenda, check my Outlook calendar. I have 3 different little places to look at things. I'll always probably have that, but that's just me. But I'm able to, because I'm more organized and because I have boundaries. So when I can't fit something into a week, I don't try and squeeze it in anymore. It has to go to Monday. Right. So sort of, I guess I want to call that boundaries, but I also sort of want to call that being more organized.
Yeah, and the
You know?
mindset too, like we talked about, of this is a business. I don't report to you, and you also have to fit into my structure, not just me fitting into you. So I think it all kind of comes together in that sense. What results have you seen in terms of your business now that you're able to sort of take that step back, think about it more strategically? Have you been able to book bigger clients? Have you been able to book more clients? Like, what kind of results are you seeing?
I was actually able to see a couple of really interesting things, and I sat down and thought about this yesterday because I knew we were going to be talking this week. Um, I think in some cases I was overbilling for certain things and underbilling for others. Right. So
Okay, that's
I'm
interesting.
yeah. So I think what has helped, what's happened is I built some confidence around what we do. And because we have a process, I don't have to get on a sales call, which, call it a sales call, call it a meeting, whatever you want to call it. Ultimately, it's a sales call. I
Mhm.
don't have to get on that call with someone and think, oh, what am I going to talk to them? Right? Like, what am I going to say? I tell them what we do. I built the confidence in 30 years of working in this. Right? I've been hiring people and managing their careers sort of movement for 30 years. So, um, I'm able to sort of focus on that instead of all this stuff in my head, and I can literally open up the system and show them if they're asking questions, I can open this up and say, "Hey, look, here's how we would do this with you. Here's where we store things. What do you store things in? How do you do that?" So what I've been able to do is we picked up more payroll clients because they know
Mhm.
we're organized, right? And we stand behind a system that we're using for that, which I will not give a shameless plug. But I'm able to feel more confident in knowing what we do because we've talked it out and I know what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. And I'm able to focus on the work I like doing. So most HR people don't like getting in the nitty gritty. I do. I love being a part of the business. I love the problems. We have an employee who we don't want to fire, but we can't manage. Oh, what do we do? Or we have to fire 3 people. How do we do that kindly? All those things. I love that work. So I can do that work because we have everything else in the system or
Well,
we've
and that's
organized.
interesting too, because when we first started talking, you weren't sure that that was what you wanted to do.
I
You
didn't
thought
know
you
what I
wanted
wanted
to
to do.
do, yeah, thought you wanted to do more training, you wanted to do more coaching. So it's interesting that now you've kind of come full circle and realized, like, no, actually, I like getting in the weeds and I like the nitty gritty.
Mhm. Mhm. And I love the coaching and the leadership and the training. But the day to day is what's important to people, right? That's what's really important to them. Yes, they need me to come in and do some training sometimes. And yes, they need, you know, yes, they need coaching. All of them need coaching. All of us need coaching. But they also need help with what's happening right. And they need to trust someone and they need to feel secure in what I can do. I couldn't be, how could they be secure before if I wasn't secure? If I didn't have
Yeah.
anything to look at and say, "Oh, yeah, that's what we can do." Or, "Oh, we can't do that for you for another 3 weeks because we're back to back for 3 weeks." Right? I met with a gentleman today that wanted to work on something right now. And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. This is going to be 2 weeks. Like, I can get you all the paperwork today. You can see my proposal today, but I can't. We should go back to proposals because you remember that. That was scary. Um, But I can do all that today, but we can't start working until after Labor Day. Like, that's not gonna happen. So, I built that ability through our conversations about boundaries and mindset to be able to go back and go, "I want your business. I do. But I also have people that are already paying me and working with me, and I have to take care of them first." Right?
And how did that feel to be able to say that to him confidently?
It made me feel like I was running a company, not just working for someone, right? It made me feel like I need to protect the work I'm doing and protect my time. And
And you're
essentially protect all those clients, including this new one, because no one wants someone to be half-assing it with,
right.
right?
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about confidence in your like sales calls, but in general, how has our work together helped your overall confidence as a business owner?
Well, I think we had these really interesting, like, side chats, right? Where you're more coach than anything else, and I think in that, like, I don't know that I knew I was getting a business coach in all of this, um, but we've had some really interesting conversations about communication and how to go about these things and how to have those conversations without sort of apologizing for being there. And it's given me strength. It's given me sort of um I've worked with a lot of coaches and I still do. Um, but like this is tied in for me. What's different about what you do, I think, and what we've done together is it's not just coaching my bad behavior or my inability to spit something out in one sentence. It's also going with, but you have systems that do that. But we put it on sticky notes. We looked at it in a sort of operational manner. I come from an operations background. Why am I not looking at things in order and like in an operational way? And you took it and you put all of what I do on these little sticky notes, right? And then I was able to look at it and go, "Oh, right. Okay, that's what we do. Oh, I can make SOPs out of that." Some of the systems that you brought to my attention, I've never even heard of before, but they're helping us create SOPs, job descriptions. I didn't even, I talk to people about having job descriptions every day of the week, but I didn't have my own, right? A client, like everything we do has to be shown with, we have to do it too. So I've been able to do that since we've been chatting and working together.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting having someone else point out that you're not doing what you're preaching to your customers? It can be quite eye-opening having someone else sort of see the dirty laundry. And tell me a little bit about how my approach helped you feel comfortable sharing that information, because it's important that you feel comfortable with the person that you're working with and sharing sort of your deep dark secrets.
Mhm.
So how did my approach make you feel safe and comfortable in our conversations?
Yeah. So there's an interesting, as a coach, there's an interesting way people coach, right? The strong coaches, I feel like they don't. I've had a few really great coaches over the years, and they don't let me away with it. They don't let me hide it. They don't let me hide. They make me sit in my feelings. And I think one of the things that you have done, and you've seen me ragey a couple of times, I would say, for lack of a better word, because you were making me change something. And I'm very flexible, but if I'm going to change something that's going to affect my everyday life, I'm not taking that lightly. Right. So I think you making me, and they say, I'm going to use a not so pretty word, but sitting in my shit, sitting in my own crap and going, okay, she's not letting me off the hook here. Like, why is she not saying it's going to be okay? Um, it's important when you're coaching someone about their business or about their life to not let them sneak by and say, okay, yeah, I'll do that. You never let me do that. And then on top of that, you follow up. So I'm stewing and you're not, you're not trying to mollycoddle me. I'm running a company. I'm not coming to you for necessarily, well, there is emotional support involved, but you know what I mean? Yes, I felt supported, but I also felt like you were doing what my clients do. You're holding me accountable for saying I'm going to do this. Did you do it? No. Why? Okay. Uh,
You hated those
Hate that.
conversations.
Hate that.
Oh, so we said we were gonna do this XYZ last week. Did you do it? No. Why?
Yeah.
We had lots of those conversations, I remember.
And from that, what I've realized is that we don't have enough time, right? Based on what we do, we don't have enough time to do the project work. So we've had to sort of reevaluate how we do project work, right? Like, when are we going to do that? How does that happen? What's the system that's in place to make us do project work well?
Can you explain what you mean by project work? Because
Mhm.
I don't know that our listeners really know what that entails for your business specifically.
So, for instance, we have a client that we're doing a really, really important day long EDI um, workshop with, right? And it's really, really important work. It's with people that are really important in our communities. And we've been working, we would have in the past, we would have sat down in one day, hammered it out, put it together, and it would have been something I was proud to have finished, but not proud of,
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yep.
right? Um, and then I would have got there that day in a heavy sweat, freaking out a little bit because I wasn't overly proud of what I'd done. And I would have probably rejigged it in my head and presented something that was different than the slides I'd come up with and the research that I've done. Um, I'll let my imposter syndrome crawl in and, sort of recreate the wheel on the fly. It's a lot of work. Um, Instead, what we've done is we've built a way when we start a project, we write down what the project is. It's in the system, right? Put it in the system. We write it. This is the client ABC. In September, we're going to be presenting on this topic. Here's the agenda that I would like to follow. So over that was in June, I think, that we did that, or July. So over the next few months, we're just adding to it, right? I was doing some research. I was on YouTube and I saw this great video. Throw this into the presentation. I was in this. So this is happening in September, the mid-September. So we're now at crunch time. But we've got a bunch of videos, we've got some articles, we've got books, we've got a list for them, which we've just done while we're doing other things. We can't do a project in 2 days and be proud of it. So we've allowed time for that. There's some flexibility in our schedules because we can go in and look at it together without being together. So we don't always have to be sitting together to do things.
Yeah. And having that central point of information probably makes a huge difference for it all. Now it's not all in your head. So
It's a
people can
hub.
actually see that and know. Yeah, exactly. It's a hub. And I know the training that you're talking, it's equity, diversity, and inclusion, just for our listeners who don't know what EDI is.
And accessibility.
But and accessibility, yes. And I remember you saying, like, I want to just be able to have templates so that I can just go in and do these trainings and make it super easy. And we really worked on, okay, what does that take? What does that look like? How can we create these templates? What are the basics that we need so that you're not scrambling every time to create this training? And I'm so happy to hear you haven't told me about this project or how it's going. So I'm so happy to hear that you guys, started planning. It's mid-August right now.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to hear that you guys have been planning it since July or June now, as opposed to, like you said, 2 days before. That
Yeah.
one's a new one for me. So I'm so happy to hear that.
There's something really cool about creating an agenda and then working to the agenda, right? And I found that that'd be the basis of our project work is that we're going to create the agenda with the client in the beginning. But also these templates, they exist anyway, right? Like they're not real. Um, but like I know what I'm doing when a company calls me in to do leadership training. I know what I'm going to talk about. But why do I have to create? I have literally 10 PowerPoint presentations that are on basically the same thing, but they're in emails or they're, they're somewhere.
Saved somewhere on a hard drive that you
Yeah.
don't know where it is.
So now we know that leadership is this, EI, is this, accessibility is this, um, communication is this. So we can work through these things in a different way. It just makes our lives a lot easier and it allows us to give the client more time because we're looking for relevant data to and information to add to what we already have created.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
So, switching gears a little bit,
Mhm.
how has your revenue or your profitability been affected by the work that we've done together? Have you found yourself more profitable? Have you found yourself bringing in more clients? What does that look like?
Yeah. That's tough to say because when we started working together, I had a client in a big M&A and they actually disappeared, right? So we
What's M&A?
like a merger acquisition going on with one
Mhm.
of these big companies that we work and they got bought and we didn't go with them. So sadly that we got a dump on that and that was one of our bigger clients. But over the last month, we have brought in, well, the last 6 weeks, we brought in new almost every week we've brought in a new client and we can service them differently. So I think that what comes September, we're going to see a real surge up. Um, Also, I've been able to look at the bottom line a little bit differently. So, um, ironing out the schedules for part-time workers, like for the 2 people that work with me, because they work part-time, being able to say, "No, this is how we're scheduling you," has helped with the staffing, like your biggest cost center is your people. So I've been able to do that differently. Um, I also haven't got on a call the client and not sold because my confidence is different, right? My
Yeah,
confidence
yeah.
is different. My mindset is different. I'm coming into this not saying one of the things I think I said this to you in the very beginning, and I think every entrepreneur goes through this, but I was getting on a sales call saying, "Oh, um, I I I am a subject matter expert and I am here to help you. And I am here to make this happen for you." And now I'm coming in sort of saying, "I want to consciously co-create the things that aren't working with you and I want to be a part of this with you. I don't know that I'm a subject matter expert on everything, but I know a lot of stuff, so let's work together." Um, so it's changed the way I'm talking to people about what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you don't know, you can figure it out. Like, you have the resources to make it work
Mhm. Yeah.
rather than feeling like, "Oh, if I don't know, they're gonna find out and think I'm a fraud and
I
not
also
wanna
have the
work with me
confidence to say
anymore."
I don't know any now. Like, not everybody who works in shipping knows everything about shipping, right? Quite often, they're gonna have to go to someone else and ask for a question. Not every lawyer knows everything. They go to a book and read it, right? So quite often, I would try and act like I knew. Now I'm like, "Can you give me until tomorrow so I can make sure we get you the right answer?"
Yeah. It's funny, when I was working at Apple I was working in their retail stores, and one of the things they taught us is you say to the customer, "I don't know, let's find out," as
That's what
opposed to,
yeah.
"I don't know, good luck, we'll figure it out." And so that's something that I carry with me and now help my clients learn as well is you don't have to be an expert at everything. You just have
Yep.
to understand how to phrase that to your clients.
Yeah.
One of the things we worked on was your habits around lead generation. And tell us a little bit about kind of what you were or weren't doing before and what that kind of looks like now that may also be contributing to nailing those, a new client every week.
Well, I didn't do anything before. Um, I think we've talked about this. I've gotten most of my business through word of mouth, right? But I now put things in the system. So if I'm thinking about a client, right, and this is maybe a bit woo woo for people, but I believe that we bring things to us through our thoughts and our words. And if I'm thinking about a client, if I notice that, oh look, that company seems like they've been looking for HR people for ages, right? Like um, I'm putting it in the system, putting it in Asana and saying, "Hey, this is someone that we're going after. I'm gonna send a little email, blah, 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 blah. Let's see if anybody finds out who the person we need to talk to there is, can you put it in here?" And so we have record of it. And we could maybe send them something, when we're doing and I'm not a big fan of the emailing things out all the time. But if we're going to do that quarterly, then let's do it to some people that are in the system that we don't know. We don't have to think about it again.
Yeah, and I think one of the systems we also talked about, or one of the habits we talked about, was following up with people who said they were interested, but maybe that wasn't the right time, or people you've connected with. And tell me how that has been going.
Well, it's a different way of doing things, right? It's always interesting. So in Ontario, we have something coming up in 2025 that there's a compliance thing around AODA, which is a Ontarians with Disabilities Act. And it's been out for years, but no one's done it. So they're cracking down and they're saying it needs to be done. This is something I could follow up with all my clients about, but I also can offer assistance or just a nod to a bunch of people that I haven't talked to in 2 years. And when I did that, oh, guess what? One of them called. Hey, Vet, I've been meaning to call you for a long time. We need some help with this. Great. Okay, we're in. So it's allowed me to follow up in a different, it's allowed me to know who I have to follow up with. I think that's it. Like,
Right.
it's not just, digging back through emails from 2022. I can actually just go in and go, "Oh, yeah, okay, let's do this. Let's send this out to them too." That was one of the things we did. That we were sending something out about the AODA. I don't do work on AODA. I know people who do. But, like, it's important for people to know that they're gonna be into a bit of a compliance issue. So, I sent it out and people called. They not necessarily about AODA,
Hmm.
but they wanted to talk. So, yeah.
Great. So now you have that habit of kind of seeing what's out there, reaching out to people in your network, whereas before you weren't really making that a priority for you, I
Mm-mm.
feel like.
No, no, no.
Okay. So, starting to wrap things up, what was one surprising outcome of our work together that maybe you didn't expect to happen or you didn't realize was something would come out of our work together, either something internal with you or something sort of external as part of your business? What was a surprise that you found?
Mhm. Um, I think there's a couple things, but I I think the most important thing I thought when we started working together that we were gonna do a lot of, like, the system, I knew that was gonna happen, and I thought you were gonna, do a lot of those sticky notes and things like that, which was great, and important. But I didn't realize that there would be this piece where I would become a little bit more confident, a lot more confident in what I was doing. Um, Even though you said it, right? Like, we'll work on that. I didn't believe that was gonna come, but I think what happened is when you see your business laying out in front of you, on a bunch of virtual sticky notes, um, you go, "Oh, wow, this is not that complicated." It is not that complicated. I did this. I did this. So I can keep doing this, and I can do this for other people. But as entrepreneurs, especially as female entrepreneurs, we second guess ourselves. We have imposter syndrome. We have all the other things going on. And I couldn't see through the weeds. And just having it put out there allowed me to go, "You did that. Keep going. Do it differently." And also to stay open to the fact that things will change. So just because you're using I was going to diss a payroll system, but I won't. You're using this payroll system, ABC payroll. Um, you don't have to use them for 20 years. You can use them for a year and then change. So the same stands for any other system. You do not have to stick with something if it's not working for you. You can change it, but you need to have it and you need to experiment and work with it. So it's opened me up, I think, to understanding that systems are an important part of making money. It's not just your business. It's if you're going to make money, where is it flowing? How is it going out? How's it coming in? Um, and how are you controlling the way it works? I think that makes, yeah. Um, but it's a confidence. It's a confidence that's come out of all of this work that I have. And I'm pretty organized in my own head, but it doesn't look organized to other people. So instead of that ball of yarn that people could see before, it's clear. I I can have a clear conversation, not worry about it. It's 1 o'clock. I know I have to get a proposal out to a client today. I'm not freaking out because I know we have everything. It's all there. We're going to put it
Yeah.
together. All the information's in
We
Asana.
we really worked on proposals too.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Wrapping up, what is one piece of advice you would either give to yourself before we started working together, or one piece of advice that you would give to someone? Let me rephrase that. Couple more questions. What is one piece of advice you would have given yourself before we started working together?
Don't be scared. Don't be scared of change.
I
It's,
think that was a good one.
yeah, don't be scared.
And then last question, what would you say to someone who is considering working with me but is kind of on the fence about it?
I would say stay open to what you need, have a conversation, and I would tell them to pick your brain because there's a lot going on in there that you can't necessarily put on social media or whatever, LinkedIn. You can do a lot of things that people might not know you can do, and you will do those things. So talk to you, ask questions, so that they know that there's more to this than just the coaching or the like systems idea-ish part. And then show up. Like if they show up the way I showed up, like I'm telling you, I've told you I didn't do it. Why? Because I didn't have time. When are you going to do it? Like just do the work and stay in it with you.
Yeah, great advice. Well,
Yeah.
Evette, thank you so much for this and all of your very kind words. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go shed a tear, I think, over around the corner after this while I eat my lunch. But if people want to reach out to you, if they're interested in your services or maybe learning more about you, how can they do that?
They can check us out on LinkedIn. Where the company is called the E-Suite. Or send me an email, Evette at the E-Suite, the e/suite.ca. Um, yeah, that's it. Check out our website. We have a website. But LinkedIn.
I will put all of that in the description below and in the show notes for everybody who's listening. And again, thank you so much, Evette.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye. And talk
Bye.
to everyone else soon.